In the shadows of history, few names evoke as much terror and awe as Joseph Stalin. He was the man of steel, the architect of a superpower, and the tyrant behind an iron curtain of fear that descended over a sixth of the world. But how did a humble boy from Georgia, born Iosif Vissarionovich Zugashvili, rise to become one of the most powerful and feared dictators in human history? Our story begins not in the gilded halls of the Kremlin, but in the rugged, provincial town of Gori. Born in 1878, young Soso, as he was known, had a harsh childhood. A bout with smallpox left his face scarred, and a carriage accident permanently damaged his arm. His father, a violent alcoholic shoemaker, beat him relentlessly. Only his mother's fierce ambition for him to join the priesthood offered a potential escape. He was sent to a theological seminary, a path that was meant to lead to the church, but instead, it led him to revolution. It was here, among forbidden books and secret societies, that he discovered the writings of Karl Marx. The priesthood was forgotten. A new, more dangerous faith had taken hold. He adopted the name Koba, after a Robin Hood-like folk hero from Georgian literature. He became a Bolshevik revolutionary, a hardened operative skilled in bank robberies, kidnappings, and extortion to fund the party. He was arrested and exiled to Siberia multiple times, but he always escaped, his resolve only strengthening with each capture. During these early years, he caught the eye of Vladimir Lenin, the leader of the Bolsheviks. Lenin saw in this gruff, determined Georgian a man of action, someone who got things done. In 1912, Koba adopted a new, more powerful name, Stalin, the man of steel. When the Russian Revolution erupted in 1917, Stalin was there, but not at the forefront. He was a backroom operator, a master of bureaucracy. While others like Leon Trotsky were delivering fiery speeches to adoring crowds, Stalin was quietly consolidating power, placing his allies in key positions within the burgeoning Communist Party. Lenin appointed him general secretary in 1922, a role others saw as dull and administrative. They were fatally mistaken. Stalin used this position to build a network of loyalists who owed their careers to him. Lenin, in his final years, grew wary of Stalin's immense power and ruthless ambition. In his last testament, he famously warned the party to remove Stalin from his post, calling him too rude and likely to abuse his authority. But it was too late. After Lenin's death in 1924, Stalin skillfully outmaneuvered his rivals. He formed alliances only to break them, playing his opponents against each other. His main rival, the brilliant but arrogant Leon Trotsky, was systematically isolated, then exiled, and eventually assassinated in Mexico on Stalin's orders. By the late 1920s, Joseph Stalin was the undisputed master of the Soviet Union. With absolute power came a terrifying vision for the future. Stalin launched the first five-year plan, a brutal campaign to transform the agrarian Soviet Union into an industrial superpower overnight. The policy of collectivization forced millions of peasants off their land and onto massive state-run farms. Resistance was met with overwhelming force. Those who opposed the new order, the so-called kulaks, were deported, sent to labor camps, or executed. The result was a catastrophic man-made famine, most devastatingly in Ukraine, known as the Holodomor. While the state exported grain to fund its industrial machine, millions starved to death. It was a tragedy of unimaginable scale, a silent holocaust hidden from the world. Simultaneously, a suffocating cult of personality was being constructed. Stalin's image was everywhere. He was portrayed as the father of nations, the wise and benevolent leader, the heir to Lenin. History books were rewritten, photographs were doctored to remove his fallen enemies, and art was commissioned to glorify his every move. Children were taught to chant his name, to see him as an almost godlike figure. To question Stalin was to question the revolution itself, an act of treason. This adoration was a mask, hiding a deep and pervasive paranoia that would soon plunge the nation into its darkest period. The year is 1934. Sergei Kirov, the popular party boss of Leningrad and a potential rival, is assassinated. While the true circumstances remain murky, Stalin used the murder as a pretext to unleash the Great Terror. A wave of paranoia and accusations swept across the Soviet Union. No one was safe. The secret police, the NKVD, worked from quotas, arresting people in the dead of night based on flimsy accusations or anonymous denunciations. Neighbors informed on neighbors, children on parents. Show trials were staged in Moscow, where old Bolsheviks, heroes of the revolution who had once been Stalin's comrades, were forced to confess to absurd, fictitious crimes of treason and conspiracy. They confessed to being spies for foreign powers, to plotting to wreck the economy, to planning Stalin's assassination. These confessions, extracted through psychological pressure and horrific torture, were broadcast to the nation, justifying the ever-widening purge. The terror consumed the very heart of the state. It decimated the Red Army's officer corps, wiping out thousands of its most experienced commanders just years before the outbreak of World War II. Intellectuals, artists, scientists, engineers, and ordinary citizens were arrested, sent to the sprawling network of labor camps known as the Gulag, or simply executed with a bullet to the back of the head. The Gulag was an empire of slave labor, stretching from the frozen tundra of Siberia to the arid plains of Central Asia. Prisoners worked in mines, logged forests, and built canals in the most punishing conditions imaginable. Millions perished from starvation, disease, and exhaustion. It was the engine of Stalin's industrialization, built on the bones of his own people. The terror wasn't random chaos. It was a calculated tool of control. It shattered all bonds of trust, atomized society, and left every individual isolated and terrified, their loyalty directed solely towards one man, Stalin. Then, in 1939, the world watched in stunned disbelief as Stalin, the leader of the world's communist state, signed a non-aggression pact with his ideological arch-nemesis, Adolf Hitler. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact secretly carved up Poland and Eastern Europe between them. Stalin was buying time, hoping the capitalist powers would exhaust each other in a war. He miscalculated catastrophically. On June 22, 1941, Hitler betrayed him. Operation Barbarossa, the Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union, began. Stalin, who had ignored countless warnings from his own spies, was reportedly paralyzed by shock, retreating into seclusion for several days. But he emerged with renewed resolve. In a radio address to the nation, he called not on the party, but on his brothers and sisters, invoking a sense of Russian patriotism that he had previously tried to suppress. The Great Patriotic War had begun. The early months were disastrous. The Red Army, hobbled by the purges, suffered immense losses. But the Soviet people, fighting for their very survival, rallied. A scorched earth policy and the brutal Russian winter halted the German advance at the gates of Moscow. The turning point came at Stalingrad. In one of the bloodiest battles in human history, the Red Army encircled and destroyed the German Sixth Army. From Stalingrad, the tide of the war turned. The Red Army began its long, brutal march to Berlin. The war cost the Soviet Union an estimated 27 million lives, an almost incomprehensible number. But it also transformed Stalin into a global statesman. He stood alongside Churchill and Roosevelt at Tehran, Yalta, and Potsdam, shaping the post-war world. The victory cemented his power at home and projected Soviet influence across Eastern Europe. The Iron Curtain, a term Churchill would later popularize, descended across the continent, dividing it into two hostile camps. The Cold War had begun. In his final years, Stalin's paranoia only intensified. He launched new purges, targeting doctors in the so-called doctor's plot, accusing them of a conspiracy to poison the Soviet leadership. Many of the accused were Jewish, and it heralded a new wave of anti-Semitic persecution. The country held its breath, fearing another great terror was imminent. But on March 5, 1953, it was all over. Joseph Stalin, the man of steel, died of a stroke. His body was laid in state, and millions mourned the man they had been taught to revere as a father. But beneath the public grief was a palpable sense of relief. The terror was over. The man who had held a nation in his iron grip for nearly 3 decades was gone. In the years that followed, his successor, Nikita Khrushchev, would denounce Stalin's crimes in a secret speech, beginning a process of de-Stalinization. Statues were torn down, cities were renamed, and the cult of personality was dismantled. But the legacy of Stalin is complex and fiercely debated to this day. He forged a superpower that defeated Nazism and put the first man in space. But he did so at an unthinkable human cost. presiding over a regime of terror that consumed millions of lives. The story of Joseph Stalin is a chilling reminder of the dangers of absolute power, the seductive allure of ideology, and the terrifying capacity for one man's paranoia to shape the fate of millions. His shadow looms long over the 20th century, a testament to a legacy written in industry, in victory, and above all, in blood. Thank you for watching. If you found this journey into one of history's darkest chapters compelling, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the figures who shaped our world. Let us know in the comments what you think about Stalin's complex legacy. Until next time.